Have you ever wondered what it takes to find the best talent for your business? Well, you're in the right place. Welcome to Unlock HR with the D'Souza sisters. I'm Desma D'Souza.
And I'm Elrona Silva D'Souza.
And today we'll uncover some answers for you. Let's get started.
Let's do it.
All right. So let's start at the beginning, which is where I always like to start. And this is the question, right? So when a small business owner thinks of, right, I need to get help. I need to hire my first employee, second employee. What is the first step that they should take?
So I think, first of all, being able to hire means you are growing. So you have to understand what your business, as it's growing, really needs. You know you need help and you need more than yourself maybe, or more than the team you have to grow. So it's something simple and basic to do is to sit and understand what is it that you need and define the role that you're looking to get help on.
In the world of HR, we call it the job
description. Exactly. I was trying to avoid the technical terms, but yes, exactly that. We need what we call as a job description. And to explain that in simple terms, it helps you identify all the list of activities, tasks, routines that perhaps you did or another team member did that this new role is going to do. So that will help you define what kind of talent you're looking for. And then you can take that job description and work towards finding candidates that match that job description, along with few other things as well.
So a lot of time, the small business owners that we work with, when we use the word job description, they're like, look, I have no time for this. I have no time to create this. Like, what is the easiest way? And I just want to hire, help me hire.
Yeah. So very often this happens, right? They just want to go and get the person, like the steps before it, they just want to, they can't find time to dedicate to that.
Yeah.
So we have tried to make some things easy because at SNK, we want to simplify as much as possible. We want to give tools to the owners as much as possible. So we have this free resource download where we have created a job description template. Not only does it have the template as in where to fill in what, but it gives you step-by-step instructions of what to fill into these areas and what to look out for and how to even develop it yourself. So we've brought it as close to like taking less time as possible.
Yeah.
And nowadays you have AI to help you get some more ideas to get the juices flowing in terms of writing it out. Use that as a blueprint and start editing to suit your business.
Yeah, exactly.
So template plus AI, hopefully you've taken a few steps out of the way.
Yeah, I think there's a bit of a cheat code in there, right?
Agreed.
A simple hack to, you start with AI, use the template, merge it together, and boom, you have a job description. So what happens if they don't have a job description? Like, why can't I say, like, I think I want to, like, let's say I want to hire for a sales role and I meet someone and I'm like, oh, this person would be perfect. Why shouldn't I just hire straight away? Why do I need a job description?
Very tempting to hire straight away because you can see the person there. You can see your problems being solved or your problems being, going away, disappearing because this person's going to come and save all this time for you, etc., etc. And perhaps in the beginning, it might look just that. It's very exciting. It's, there's a little bit of romance that happens between an owner and the potential candidate. And the honeymoon period is all very exciting because this person is, on board. You're letting that person shine, do things. And very soon you realize that you've not really set the right expectations or even defined the core responsibilities. You've said, the same example if we take, you've said, yeah, I need sales, but sales to which customer, sales to what products, what is the sales tools that they should know to use, have to use, etc. All of that suddenly, is not very clear.
Yeah.
So your learning curve on the job goes a little longer than you want it to be because you want somebody to get started right away. So the job description is an excellent tool to help reduce that learning curve. once you get over your romance and honeymoon period.
Yeah, and I also think, from the employee perspective, imagine coming into work and not knowing exactly what you're supposed to do. And suddenly you're told that you're supposed to sell, for instance, but you don't know how you'll get measured. What are the exact routine tasks that you have to do? What are your responsibilities? What are your accountabilities? And it's always good for both the employer or the hiring manager or the line manager and the employee to be on the same page in terms of, here's what I want you to do, and if there's any help needed to ensure that this employee is in fact successful, then that's a good opportunity to ask as well.
I can hear a lot of HR people out there saying, yes, please help us get that job description, written down, because it helps. Other than owners, if you have a larger team and you're looking to, grow, start a new business line, and you're setting up a team and you have HR to help you out, without a job description, they're also searching for talent blind. So, there's a strong movement. I can feel it behind us after this podcast, that people will be like, read this podcast to say, like, this is why we ask for job descriptions. And you don't want to be in a position where the person who's doing the role is writing out the job description, because they are going to write it. There's always going to be not so much of an objective view of what the activities are. So it has to be done by the subject matter expert or the person that is responsible to manage that person's delivery. And like you rightly said, what is that person accountable for? It's best for that person to know that rather than to have to imagine that.
Yeah. So moving on from the job description, that's just literally the first step, right?
Very much so.
So, walk us through the entire recruitment process, a simple recruitment process. It doesn't have to be super complicated as it can be in the larger organizations. But for a small business, either starting up or growing their team, what is an ideal recruitment process to follow?
Great question, because I think in small business world, it's so dynamic and you're doing so many things. You forget that even recruitment needs a systematic, structured process. And what that process is can be very simple, but still has these key stages that you have to follow. So once you've created the job description, you have to understand how much you want to pay for that role, how much you want to, what are the work schedule, all of those requirements also need to be defined along with the tasks and activities. Once you've done that, you enter the first step of recruitment is where you go looking for the candidate. We call it sourcing, but it's the simple thing about where you're going to find talent. How are you going to find talent? How are you going to screen the talent that applies to your role? Are you going to do it yourself? Because if you didn't have the time to write a job description, you have the time to screen candidates, or you're going to go and look for help either from the HR in your organization or from an external recruiter, so that your partner for recruitment and your sourcing channels is the first step.
Okay.
So you've got that. Now you've advertised your role, let's say, or these channel partners are helping you find the candidates, and you get a list of candidates. Then you start the screening process of that, where you look at your job description, you look at your team, and you try and understand whether the application meets the requirements on paper or online application. Once you've had that, then you go into the perhaps interviews. You start doing the interviews or assessments as well. And at that time, you could, have a quick call, talk to the person, understand whether what you have pre-screened is what is actually the case, availability, etc. So this is the initial assessment. Once you're happy with what you've seen, maybe you invite that person for a proper interview. And once you've done with the interview and you've interviewed a few candidates, you have a sense of who you think is most suited for the role. And then you go ahead, you make the offer. If the person accepts, then the person starts. So just to summarize, you start with sourcing, then you go into screening, then you go into assessment. Assessment could be 1 level or 2 levels. Then you make an offer, and then the employee starts.
And can you combine stages? Does it have to be individual different stages, or can you just do call the person in, assessment, selection, everything happens in one
if you have the time for it? But sometimes it's good to give some time for each step, because the more you reflect on the interview, reflect on that, the more understanding you get about the person as well. So trying to rush through a recruitment is also not recommended, because recruitment needs time in the
Yeah.
way it's to be done. Candidates are not always waiting to apply for your role, so it takes time, and someone might come a little later down the line. So rushing, you might miss out on a good talent as well.
So that's a great point, right? So what is the advantages of not rushing through that recruitment process? Because again, any small business owner, time is money, right? So you
Yes.
want someone to start in a week if you can.
Yes.
So at what point do at what point do you say, okay, I've done enough searching, I'm going to hire? Otherwise, it's just going to be an endless search.
Yeah, so it's not about giving time, like going constantly looking for new talent. That's not where you should spend your time. The entire process should be given time. So each step needs to be carefully managed and carefully executed, and then moved on to the next step. But if you're going to constantly wait to find the new talent, then you are losing time and investment and your and resources, because candidates also have a, as we say in the HR world, a very short shelf life,
Yeah.
right? So, you might miss out on the person that you initially shortlisted. So, give it time, but not excessively, because you have to move on and take a call on the candidate. As a business owner, you take risks all the time, and finding a candidate is also there is an element of risk. You can minimize the risk through this process, but you can never eliminate the risk, because that's why you have probation period, to help you, find out whether the candidate is perfect for your role, company or not.
Do you think employer branding has a role to play, especially for small businesses?
Absolutely, because employer branding is what will help you get the talent, as opposed to your peers in the industries or those large scale companies. There's a statistic, very interesting statistic, that small businesses actually are places where employees are actually happy.
Really?
Yeah. So from a well-being perspective, by default, all surveys YouGov and many others have done, it says that small business SME companies is where the employees are most happy, as opposed to large organizations, because in small businesses, they see the direct contribution of their efforts. They have better family-based feel teamwork,
Because it's a smaller
because
team,
it's a
maybe,
smaller
and you
setup.
can see that like my work directly impacts
Exactly.
the bottom line, or like the customer, the client, and
Yeah.
you feel less like a cog in the wheel, but
Correct. Yeah.
you matter.
You go beyond your department, you help others, because your department and the other department could be just one person away, not layers of people and organizations away. So that is something that is a great way to like build your employer brand on. Like, if you want to have a happy work atmosphere, we are this. When you advertise a role, it's great to put these elements in, because that's maybe just the push a candidate needs to apply to your role.
Yeah.
Other than that, also, like, invest in an employer brand is quite important. And it's not, when I say investment, it doesn't cost a lot of money, but it takes a little bit of thinking and a little bit of effort on drafting or articulating what is your company about.
Yeah.
What is the culture? What is your team? And what can you say more than we're a family here? Like, what does that mean? What are
You
the
mean like,
values?
what are the values? That's what
Yeah.
I was getting at. Yeah, articulating those values.
Very important. Yeah.
Yeah. And, like, so how do they communicate? So you can articulate your values, right? But how do you communicate it out to your audience?
So when you do this recruitment process, there's something that we call as candidate experience. Now, the candidate experience is going to decide whether this person that you are so excited about joining is actually going to join, or the chances of that person joining are stronger. And that is where this candidate experiences the best recruitment process ever. And that's where you can use your employer branding to help navigate this person through the channels. Because the first touch point is when you're sourcing them, then they're going to interview them, then you're going to make an offer. But throughout that, there's so many touch points, and throughout that, you should have a great communication plan. So be transparent, let them know how they're doing, where they are, keep them updated. Let them know how to come prepared for the interview, what's going to happen when they meet them on time. All of these things add to that candidate experience and builds that employer brand. So you
Also,
can literally work in parallel, but at the same time.
yeah. I think also, if I just think back to our own experience, right? Like we've had clients, or rather candidates, who we've put through the recruitment process, and they go through the entire
Yeah.
process. And then eventually, or at some point, they withdraw from the process. And that's because they haven't heard good things about the employer in the market. And that is, whether it's on Glassdoor, or they, like maybe even Google reviews. If someone has very poor Google reviews, even though it has nothing to do with the employment per se, but from a branding perspective, your marketing, and how your reputation in the market is really, really important if you want to get the right team on board.
100%. And very interesting that you mentioned Google review, because often entrepreneurs or hiring managers don't pay attention to
Yeah.
these things because they think that's marketing, that's sales. But recruitment is a sales to for somebody to join your company. It's the same
Yes, exactly.
principles you have to apply, right? Why are candidates attracted to your business as opposed to others? Going beyond the fact that they might are looking for a job, but why you versus someone else? And a lot of the times, people are now searching for information to help validate their choices and decisions,
Yeah.
especially if they're moving an employment that they're already in, and and choosing to work with you instead.
Yeah.
They do a lot of their own research and their own checks on companies, and that can vary from speaking to friends and family, going online, checking about them, finding out about the owner, and working. Like, owners look at LinkedIn profiles, so do
I was
candidates.
just going to say that, like we always talk about how you have to be conscious of what you put out on social media, because if you're looking for a job, then employers will come and will look at your social
Sure, yeah.
profile before they put you through the process. But it also works the other way, right? Even employees, or potential employees, or candidates, when they apply to a company or they want to work with a company, they also look for what the company stands for. So that employer branding is so key.
100%. And it's not in the places you typically think they're going to look, right? We've given you some places where they look. There could be others. And they've either worked with your product. As a consumer, they might have experienced your product. That will also show
Yeah,
whether they
exactly.
actually believe in what you're saying, because you might be saying things on the website, but your product experience doesn't really align. They're not going to be promoting your company if they hear from friends and family, oh, this person is looking to, um, I've applied for this role, etc. I think the talent pool, surprisingly, or people may not know it, is very, very small. And when you're in the recruitment process, you'll realize how connected we all are,
Yeah.
and how much of information flows through all the informal channels that have an impact on your recruitment process.
I remember, and this is a personal example, like when I was approached by a very large organization to for a role, and it was a very senior role as well. And so they did the initial screening with me, and it was a great experience.
Okay.
And then the recruiter called me back and she said, "I'm sorry to ask this, but like, what passport do you hold?" And I knew where that was
Boom.
going. Yeah, and of course, I didn't pursue that, but that wasn't the end of it. A couple of years later, someone in my network, who was also very talented, was approached for a role with that organization, and it wasn't obviously the same role; it was a different role. But she connected with me to say, "Hey, I can't remember how she figured I knew someone, or maybe I think we had a common LinkedIn connection." So she asked me, she's like, "Can you check, about the working environment or something like that?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, I know this company. I had, I was approached for a senior role, but this was my experience, and then I decided not to pursue the opportunity." And she was like, "Okay, thanks for sharing," and she didn't pursue it either. So whether we are talent or not, this is the reputation of this really large brand in the in the the local landscape. And the other thing I think is, like, talent always has options.
Exactly.
It may not be obvious, or people think talent, if you offer them a job, they have to take it. But the truth is, talent always has options, and they will and they should exercise those
They
options, right?
should. And it's also, talent is here and employer job opportunities here, and there's a whole lot of traffic going in all directions in the middle.
Yeah.
And you have to kind of meet them halfway for them to understand that what is your value proposition that the talent gets attracted to. We have a very multi-generational talent landscape over here, as well as very diverse landscape. So how you message is, could be received very differently from different people.
Yeah.
So somebody might, be attracted to that message, and somebody will be equally put off by it.
Yeah.
So you have to be very conscious about how you present yourself and how you present your company, because talent always has options.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Again, another example comes to mind of someone I know who went through a recruitment process, right? And he wasn't successful through the process. And the recruiter was in touch with him the entire time. And then he obviously wasn't successful. And then he got an email the next day to say, it was a very generic email to say,
System generated.
system generated email to say the role has been filled, which he also knows in 24 hours the role was not filled. He didn't get it. And that's fine. But I think how you communicate to the potential employee or to the candidate is so important.
Absolutely. Like, if somebody has come to your office or met you in person, I think the right candidate experience and the courtesy is to give that person a call or a personal note to say, I'm sorry, there was some other options, and thank you so much for, taking the time to be part of this recruitment process. I think that itself will be, will have so many, reap so many rewards. And you also have to remember, the same talent are also your potential consumers.
Exactly.
They could be buying your product, they could be advocating your product. They might not have joined you, but if they've enjoyed the experience, next time they might refer you to a business. And that's happened to us.
Yeah.
We've had consultants that have worked with us and now are in jobs, and now they are contacting us to help them with some of their HR work.
We've also had candidates actually that have
Yeah.
referred us to their new employers, or they've like, oh, in fact, I remember speaking to this potential client, had nothing to do with recruitment. And I always ask all clients where they find us. And someone, he said, actually, I was speaking to your recruiter, and that's, when I heard of you, and I didn't get the job, but I had a great experience. So when this opportunity came up for some HR services, I thought of you guys straight away.
Absolutely. I mean, that's how interconnected we are. Your talent today could be a customer tomorrow, or your champion out there in the market.
Yeah. You mentioned, we're working with different generations.
Yes.
We have this multi-generation employee candidate pool, employee workforce, right? And so if I think about some of the red flags from an employer perspective, like what are some of the red flags that an employer can look out for as well in candidates? Because, this experience is a two-way street.
Absolutely. So when employers are going out to recruit, when you're doing the screening and so on, there's some red flags to look at. But equally, you as an employer and a recruiter, you also have some red flags that you have to be conscious of. So it's both sides, right? And the red flags could be the way, people might, debate on this, but I feel like if the CV is not well written, or there's errors, or there's
basic
very
spelling.
obvious chat GPT copies, then
Foster. That's how I know something's chat GPT, when it's a sentence and there's the word foster in it.
Or delve.
Or elevate.
Yeah. So anyway, somebody please use chat GPT, get to the point, but like put your spin on it, put your value add on it, because that's what we will eventually see, right? All of those are red flags. So when you're screening, look for them. Don't focus on things about, whether they are out of a job or within a job. That's not important. We could probably ask the question as like, are you having a career break, or what is the reason for career break? Because nowadays, there could be so many reasons why people are out of a job.
Yeah,
it's not
absolutely.
in the past, people would question that. But I think if you want to find the right person, that person might be just waiting for your opportunity. So don't discount that as a red flag. That could be just a question to ask. Second is
I think a red flag is when you call a candidate, for instance, for a screening call, and they have sometimes, again, this is from experience, they're like, what job is this? What company are you? And, just complete lack of awareness that, and you wonder if you've made a mistake calling this person because they seem to have no recollection that they have applied for an opportunity.
Yeah, I'm just going to change the conversation and just give a shout out to all the candidates. Please take the effort of knowing where you've applied and maintain a log, because you never know where a call can come from. And if you're applying, be alert and be responsive to the contacts that you make, because it's very important, because even that call has an impression on how the recruitment will continue for you as well. Doesn't matter who's calling you, but be responsive, be courteous, and don't do that.
Yeah, exactly. And we spoke about ChatGPT, right? And I remember, again, a little funny anecdote that happened recently is someone applied to a position or sent me a message on LinkedIn or email, I can't remember, to apply for the position. And this candidate, bless them, had used ChatGPT for that introductory email, but they forgot to change or actually amend anything. So it read something like, "Hi, I am pleased to apply for," and it literally
Insert
had
role.
insert role in insert company. I think I would be a great fit for insert role. And this was literally their email, and also and then you also get comments to say, oh, we never hear back from recruiters, right? So
Yes.
there's things on both sides. So if you are using ChatGPT, please do yourself a favor and make sure that you take the time to edit and make it personal to you, because if you don't, then recruiters or employers can see through that.
Exactly. And as an employer, or as a recruiter or a hiring manager, there's some red flags that you have to be conscious of as well. And we can talk about that just a little. In terms of like, when you're coming to interview a candidate, come prepared, Not being prepared for a candidate is a red flag, because if they figure out that you have not read their CV, or you also don't know, what is their experience or what is their last company, they're not vested in you. That relationship or that connection is not built. So even if you do call them for a second interview, they probably would, ghost you. And it
Yeah.
has happened.
Yeah.
Where candidate has gone for an interview and, from the reception, oh, what job is that you're coming for? And then the hiring manager was 15 minutes late for the interview. And when they sat together, so he said, oh, so what job are you applying for? And the candidate is like, I've taken time out of my day job, taken time off to come here. The courtesy of like knowing that I'm coming for this
Just
interview
respectful
is
thing
very
to do.
disrespectful, and didn't want to pursue it, and it was a senior role. So it doesn't matter if it is a senior role or junior role, but respect should be given for every candidate that is arriving. So those things should be avoided, because those are red flags that the candidate will see. The other thing is not having a set of questions to ask, like which are going to help you understand and go deeper into that person's experience. Avoid questions like which gives you a yes or no answer, like, oh, so you've worked in sales, so the person will say yes.
What happens from there?
What happens from
Yeah.
there? Like, that's a yes or no. But ask questions like, okay, where all have you, what areas are you familiar with, like, so that somebody is allowed to demonstrate their expertise.
Yeah.
So the red flags are on both sides, but it's important that the hiring manager as well as the candidates are aware of it and start working on it.
I think, from an employer perspective, a good way to ask questions is understand where their past experience can be beneficial to your business. And a great way to do that is to ask them to like give an example of a past situation where something has happened and how they've dealt with it, right? Like,
Yeah.
so can you think of an instance or an example where you had to use your decision making skills, or you had to exercise B, and this requires thought. And that's why, going back to that job description, if you know exactly what you're looking for, then you're able to understand if this person's a right fit, because you have your requirements and you can literally go like, okay, this person can do 3 out of 4 things. and then you can make a more objective decision of whether it's the right fit.
Yeah, and as a on that question, how you're going to assess when you get these answers is something that I always help with line managers to break down that answer with a simple acronym that we use, which is called STAR.
Yeah.
So if you get an answer as a hiring, take down what is the situation of the task that that person did, what were the actions that they executed, what were the results, and in that way you're able to take that answer from the candidate and assess whether they can actually do the task that you were evaluating that person for.
Yeah. And again, drawing from my own experience as being a recruiter, but also as being a candidate. And I remember in one of my interviews, the line manager, it was a panel of 3, but when they asked me the question, and I can't remember what the question is, he specifically said, he asked me the question and he said, it would be useful if you can tell me the situation, tell me what you did, and tell me what the result was. So then it helped me kind of also articulate my response. So then I wasn't, losing marks for not giving a very sort of well-structured response, because ultimately, you are in an interview situation.
Yeah,
it is nerve-wracking.
It is very much.
And, speaking of nerve-wracking, I think it's also very important for the employer to take the time to put the candidate at ease and not just kind of, bombard them with questions and try to catch them out. Because sometimes employers want to, or at least I've, again, had this experience where I feel like I was almost examined as opposed to interviewed, and I walked out of the interview thinking, oh my God, was that an interrogation or was that an interview?
That's the word. Like, it's not about interrogating a candidate and checking whether they have done something. It's about understanding whether this person will add value to my organization or my business, and will they help me in delivering my business?
Yeah.
Because that's how you're going to channel and how your business is going to grow, is through the talent that you have in your organization. So by interrogation, you're just going to make the candidate nervous and not bring out the best in them at the interview. Make them feel at ease, make them comfortable, and make yourself comfortable as well, because it's also very intimidating for hiring managers to interview candidates, I have noticed, and them also trying to breathe and take it easy will just change the whole atmosphere in the interview room.
Yeah, I mean, both are serving a purpose to each other, right? Nobody is
Exactly.
doing anyone a favor. Talent needs a job and you need good talent.
Yeah.
So, make sure that the situation is beneficial to both.
Yeah,
And
there's
really, what is the point in interrogating someone? Like, what are you getting out of it? You're wasting your time. That person doesn't feel at ease or is not able to give their best. You have just spent half an hour or an hour with a person only to know that they're not going to be able to do the job for you. So it actually serves no one to interrogate.
And it's not about power games. This is not a place to play power games. The balance of power is very equal. Excuse me. And, the power has to be, displayed in that way, the way the back and forth. And even candidates, when they ask questions, it's good to give real answers and, not just for the sake of saying, oh, do you have any questions for me? And then, if there are no questions, that is like a mark. But candidates also should ask questions. So that's the testament of preparation, right?
Exactly.
And that helps balance the powers between the interviewer and the interviewee.
Yeah. So why is it? So let's say a business wants to, like, they're scaling rapidly and they don't have the time to follow a structured process. What is in terms of dollars, right? What is the dollar value of getting recruitment wrong?
This might shock people, but there's many statistics, but it's at least 3 to 4 times the cost of a monthly salary. That is the cost of a recruitment going wrong. And
so break that down.
So take that value. So it's about your time, that if you add a dollar value to that, how much of your time you have invested. You might be having hiring managers that have taken the time to go through it. You've spent on adverts, you've spent on channels of recruitment. In UAE, you've spent on visa and you've hired this person. Then you've paid the salary of this person, but you've got very little ROI on that person. And this could all reflect on was the hiring done right. So the general assessment is around 3 to 4 times the salary. And if you think about costs before the person joined and after the person joined, and then going back, remembering you have to go back into the market and look. So you have lost time as well in there to account for. So the losses are quite big. And if you're a small business, you really can't afford that.
Yeah, exactly. And the lost time of bringing someone on board, trying to train them, only to realize like this is not working out, and then you have to go back to the drawing board as well.
Yeah, and owners, like, you have sharpened your gut instincts, you have sharpened your skills about saying, oh, I know who's the right person. That may be so, but validate that through the interview process. Give the process the opportunity to validate your gut selection.
Yeah.
Because sometimes the red flags are further down the line and not up front.
So it's interesting that you mentioned gut, right? Because I want to sort of touch on what we know is unconscious bias. So how would you talk about gut versus unconscious bias? Like bring that awareness to an employer that says, no, I think this person would be a great fit, and they're like, my gut says so. But it actually could be a case of unconscious bias.
Very difficult to really isolate.
It's like a fine line.
Yeah,
right?
It's a fine line between that. I think if the gut tells you, I think you should listen to it, but you have to also check yourself, saying, is this my gut or is this my unconscious bias?
So what is unconscious bias?
Unconscious bias is, as the word says, it's something that you're not conscious of, but it's something that you have inherently in you. Everybody has. You have it, I have it. It's an unconscious bias that's prevalent everywhere. And there are many versions or different types of unconscious bias as well. So understanding that or being reflective of that is very important, especially in this recruitment process. For some reason, it comes out much stronger than in many other interactions. As HR professionals, we've seen that. And this sometimes overtakes your capability or your rational decision-making process of finding talent. Because you're either, is the gut saying, oh, this person is great because they're just like me?
Yeah.
Or is this person great because they actually can do the role and they've demonstrated that in the interview? Or is it somebody that is the person who's given you a great feeling because they've, had the most recent interaction has been great and that's it. But the rest of it you ignore because this overpowers the others.
Yeah.
So this is why I started in the beginning to say, let the recruitment take its time. Don't rush to make these decisions because you have to reflect on that interaction.
Yeah, but also don't stretch it to a point that you impact the candidate experience and you lose candidates along the way. So it has to be, again, a fine balance between making decisions swiftly, but having a thorough process behind it. So it is as much as possible, to the best of your ability, the right decision. And of course, you said there's an element of risk that is in every recruitment process.
Yeah, you have to keep a sense of urgency and a sense of excitement going as through the recruitment process, because like we explained the process, it's not a short process, it's a long process which has a few steps, and you have to keep the candidate excited throughout that process. So at every step you're refining your selection further and further, and that's how you're getting to the end result, right? And it takes time, but it is not about time lapsing, but time just, to take the time you need to reflect on it, but not take the time to say, oh, I can't do this right now because I've got other priorities. Make recruitment a priority because it will yield results at the end of it.
Amazing. Okay, so I think that wraps up this episode for today. But I want to do something very quick, which is what I'm going to say, a rapid fire summary of the whatever we've talked about. Wow. So let's maybe come up with 3 you and 3 me, 6 key takeaways from the session.
Done.
Ready?
Let's go.
Okay, yep. You first.
So be prepared for recruitment and be prepared when you go for interviews.
Okay, so I think write a job description so you are very clear on the person that you're looking for and the role that you want him or her to do.
Then be conscious of the candidate experience and your employer brand and how candidates view your business.
Okay, you said 2 points there. I was gonna
Are
say
too
one of them.
excited.
Yeah. Okay. Watch out for red flags and be aware of check yourself, and when you make decisions, or whether it's just your gut feeling or it is unconscious bias.
Yes.
We have two
And
more.
we have two more? Okay.
Okay.
The third one is make sure that you are recruiting for the role and making sure that the candidate is a fit for the role as opposed to any other parameters that you get from unconscious bias.
Yeah. And my last takeaway is, remember that candidates can also be future customers or clients. So treat them with respect, make sure that they have a great experience, because your brand ultimately, that you need good talent to create a profitable and successful business.
Yes.
All right. Remember, getting the right team helps you to create that successful and profitable business. We really hope you've got some insights from today. And if you have, we would really love, love, love if you can share at least this episode with at least one person in your community, or a fellow maybe business owner who you believe would benefit from the session.
And a request from my side is to please, once you've listened to our podcast, leave a review for us and tell us how much you liked it and what could we do differently next time.
All right. Join us next time on Unlock HR with the D'Souza sisters, where we'll uncover another HR topic.
Ciao.
Ciao. As we wrap up today's episode, we want to extend a huge thank you to our sponsor, Pacific Prime Insurance Brokers. With 19 offices globally, Pacific Prime are an award-winning, trusted insurance partner for businesses and individuals requiring any type of insurance solution. They specialize in providing unbiased and reliable insurance advice to simplify your process of finding the right insurance solutions for your business and your employees. So whether you need comprehensive medical coverage or any other insurance solution, their 150-member team in Dubai alone are always ready to assist you. You can check the show notes below for a link to their website and a dedicated email address just for you to reach out to them.